a quelqu'un qui a dit que je peux pas jouer aux poupées, et après j'ai pleuré.
Welcome to Patriarchal, the podcast that reflects on parenthood in the 21st century by trying to free it from the patriarchal model. Today we're going to talk about an approach that, for many, profoundly changes the way we support our children, conscious parenting. We grow up with the idea that our role as parents is to guide, educate, and teach. But what if our greatest mission was, above all, to transform ourselves? What if the key to supporting our children wasn't in ready-made methods, but in working on our own history, our unconscious patterns, and our childhood wounds? To explore this question, I have the pleasure of welcoming an exceptional guest, Dr. Shefali Tsabary. A clinical psychologist and best-selling author, she is internationally recognized for her groundbreaking approach to parenting. Her book, The Conscious Parent, was praised by Oprah Winfrey as one of the most powerful books ever written on parenting. Today, we will be focusing on her latest book, The Parenting Map, which offers a structured 20-step journey to better understand and transform our approach to parenting. In this episode, we'll discuss unconscious parenting and the patterns we unknowingly repeat, the keys to turning our frustration into awareness, and the infamous guilt that so many parents experience. We'll also explore how to practically apply the principles of the parenting map in everyday life. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating with as many stars as possible, and drop a comment wherever you can, especially on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where I can even reply. You can also find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Want to react to the episode? Leave me a voice message on SpeakPipe, even from your phone. The link is in the description. Oh, and if you like to financially support the podcast to help it grow, you can subscribe to Patriarchal Plus to listen to episodes ad-free, get early access, and enjoy over 80 bonus episodes. The link is also in the description. Alright, let's get started with my first question. Dr. Shefali, how would you define conscious parenting, and why is it an essential approach to transforming our relationship with our children? Enjoy the episode.
Well, in order to understand conscious parenting, we have to understand unconscious parenting, which I called the traditional parenting, which is how most of us were raised, where the parent simply focused on creating a perfect child that could make them feel good about themselves, and a child who could fulfill their fantasies. And we did not pay attention to how our childhood was impacting the parenting relationship. So conscious parenting is about the parent realizing that the child is not here to fulfill your fantasies, but is really here to discover who they are. And it is as much for you to raise yourself as it is for your child to be raised by you. So conscious parenting puts the focus on the parent to become more conscious, to raise themselves, to understand how they are influencing their relationship with their children.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In your book, The Parenting Map, you outline 3 key steps, moving from frustration to clarity, from control to conscious choice, and from conflict to connection. Could you explain each of these steps and why they are essential, please?
Well, the first part of the book, The Parenting Map, is focused on understanding how our belief systems have created such intense suffering. For example, the belief system that we should make our children happy all the time, or the belief system that our children need to be successful, or the belief system that I need to control my child in order to be a good parent. All these belief systems create a dysfunctional relationship with our children. The next step of the book goes into the parent understanding their own inner childhood, their own inner pain, and how they have worn ego masks. And I talk about the different ego masks that we wear to protect ourselves. And then the final part of the book gives actual tools and strategies to connect with our children. So if you go through these steps, there are 20 steps and 3 phases like a map, then by the end of the book, you are going to be more aware, more connected, more healed in your own life. And I look at the parent-child relationship as an invitation for parents to raise themselves, as an invitation to parents to become more conscious. So that's what I teach in this book. How can parents become more conscious?
Okay, I think we need this book in French, please.
I think it's getting translated. It's been translated in so many languages.
Thank you. Great news. How can parents identify unconscious patterns inherited from their own upbringing and avoid repeating them with their children?
It's very hard to avoid. The most we can do is become aware and stop it. The fact that we are going to repeat patterns is undeniable. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how long, how much, how deep, and whether you can turn it around. So this is not about being perfect parents, never yelling at your kids or never messing up. You're going to mess up every time, every day, perhaps. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to recognize that something is coming up from my own childhood. This is an invitation for me to look deeper, to ask more questions, to try to understand that this relationship is a two-way street. It's not just me telling my child what to do. My child is also giving me data and information about myself. And can I take that in, and can I raise myself to a new level of consciousness?
Do you think it's correct to say that every time I behave in a way that I don't want, but I can't control myself, this is a manifestation of unconscious patterns?
Yes. So every time we lose it and we don't even realize that we are losing it, that means the unconscious has taken over from the past. We don't know what in the past, but the fact that something has just taken over like a tsunami, that means you're stuck in an unconscious pattern. And your invitation is to look at that in the mirror and go, wow, I really lost my temper. What is that about? What were the feelings that I was going through? And maybe they came from my childhood. Maybe they came from my first marriage. Maybe they came from my best friend in school. We don't know where all it comes from. It comes from a little bit of many things. But the fact is that right now I am behaving crazy and I need to look at that in myself. See, in the traditional parenting model, if the parent lost their temper, they do not look at themselves. They just blame their child. So in this model, we're asking ourselves to look at ourselves and realize that we are creating this dynamic, that we are causing this problem in our children's lives.
I'm just saying to myself, doesn't make a lot of culpability?
A culpability, like blame?
Yes.
It's not about blame. It's about responsibility. Do I make my child feel bad because I lost my temper, or do I look at myself? It's about like a sacred responsibility to own a little bit of your own patterns. So you're not just blaming your child, and then your child ends up feeling like they are the bad ones when you also had a role in that.
Okay, thank you very much. What practical tools do you suggest for transforming moments of frustration and parental stress into moments of clarity and growth?
Well, there are many steps. First is really to look in the mirror, and become aware that this is not just my child's fault. The idea that somebody on the outside can create so much internal pain over a period of time. I understand 1 time, 2 times, 10 times. But if this is a pattern, how can we keep blaming our child or our partner for causing so much pain? At some point, we have to say, either I leave it, right? With children, you can't leave, but either I stop or I change it, or I accept it. So if we're caught in a pattern that goes on and on and on for years, at some point we need to say, okay, I am part of this dynamic. I am co-creating this. How am I doing this to myself? And that's when you can begin to make changes.
You emphasize conscious choices in the parenting map. What are some concrete examples of conscious decisions parents can make in their daily lives?
Well, there's so many decisions we can make. The first big decision we need to make is that we need to stop judging our children with a label like this is good and this is bad. Because the minute we judge them or judge anyone, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, it creates a bad feeling. And then we're going to react badly. We need to shift from labels and blaming and judging our children or our partners to understanding what is it that they're trying to communicate? What is it that they're trying to say? You see, the reason we judge them is because they're making us feel bad in a particular way. They're making us feel like we are responsible. And because we don't like that feeling, we judge them as bad and we punish them or we shame them or we shut them down. But what about trying to lean in and understand, okay, I don't like what they're doing, but can I understand why they're doing it? And when we begin to understand somebody, then we move away from just reacting to them or yelling at them. So that's one of the big things we can do. And the next step after understanding them is we can try to empathize with them. And what that means is imagine if we were them, how would we feel? So suppose they tell you, I hate the way you talk to me and you are the worst parent. Instead of being defensive and saying, no, I'm not, I'm an amazing parent, go into their shoes and say, wow, that must feel so hard to have a parent that you feel is the worst parent. Like that must be a horrible feeling. Now that's very hard to do because they're talking about you. So you're like, what the hell? I'm not a bad parent. I'm an amazing parent. But if you really want to shift them, you have to say, wow, that must feel really horrible for you to have a parent that you think is the worst parent in the world. And when you do that, then the child begins to feel empathized and hurt. It's very hard to do. And then other ways that we can help our children is to validate them. Yeah, from your point of view, I understand. You feel I've hurt you or I have hurt you. I understand. I'm listening to you. I can empathize. I can validate. I acknowledge. Just these small things make a big difference in the child feeling respected, feeling heard. But so many of us, get defensive. We feel judged and we deflect. And of course, the basics about not yelling at your children, pausing, taking a pause, relaxing, those are always the standard protocol.
How can we maybe you have a trick if we are starting yelling, we are starting being angry, we are starting our own tantrum. How can we stop that? Do you have something to help?
We can put something on our mouth, you mean?
Okay.
Like shut our ears, shut our eyes. It's so many things. So in the book, I talk about how we parents don't understand the brain of a child. If we understood their brain and how their brain develops, we would save a lot of yelling. Because, for example, if our child forgets their backpack, we want to yell at them. If the child forgets to clean up their room, we want to yell at them. This causes disconnection. What we need to realize is that their brain is not yet developed to remember things. Their brain is not yet developed to be organized. Their brain has these big holes in them, and we are getting angry, but they're not capable, they're not able. So, if we can understand that, then if we can understand that children need security, they need safety, then we will be very intentional in creating that safety. If we understand that children need to play and children need to be wild and children cannot sit at a desk, then when your child doesn't do well in school, you won't be so angry. Children need to interact with other children. Children have temper tantrums, they have meltdowns because their brain is not yet emotionally regulated. So, all these ways of looking at our children can help us in those moments from wanting to kill them, right? We want to kill them,
Yes,
but
sometimes.
if we understand that this is the nature of children, and it's our fault for having children and not understand it's like getting a dog and expecting the dog to be a cat. Children are wild, they are unpredictable, they are messy, they are dirty, they don't listen, they're disorganized, they hate studying for the most part. They, will rebel, they will be ungrateful. This is the nature. Now, doesn't mean that they shouldn't change, they shouldn't become amazing people, but part of it is their nature. And if we could understand that, we would really save a lot of anguish.
In The Conscious Parent, you mentioned that children are our spiritual partners. Can you explain this concept and how it can help parents better support their children?
So, the traditional parenting model says that the parent is in charge and the parent has to lead the way. Well, what I teach in conscious parenting is that let children also lead you. Let children also teach you. There's so much we can learn from children. And if you can allow them to be your spiritual partners, then both of you can look at this journey as taking this adventure together so that it becomes about a partnership and not just you being the dictator. Now, it doesn't mean that the parent is not the leader. Of course, the parent has to lead when the children are young. But as the children grow older, we can enter into a partnership with them more and more. And in that way, our children begin to allow us to grow as well. And we can learn so much from who it is they are and the feedback that they give us. And then we use this journey to evolve ourselves. And it's not just one way where we are teaching them, but they are also teaching us.
Could you explain the importance of respectful discipline and how it differs from the more traditional punishment-based approaches? I want to say to you that in France, the culture is about punishment. It's the first thing we think about when children don't behave like we wish is how can I punish? So please help French parents with that.
We have to understand that punishment creates fear, and ultimately fear will create disconnection. So we have to ask ourselves, do I want to create fear in my child? Do I want to oppress my child, suppress my child? Or do I want my child to feel safe? Again, like I said, children need to feel safe. So when we punish them a lot and they feel unsafe, then they're going to grow up in a world where they think that they need to be on the defensive because they look at the world as a scary place, as a threatening place, as a cruel place. And while the world can be that way, it doesn't serve our children to be very defensive. We want our children to trust, to be open, to feel comfortable, to feel safe, to make mistakes. So we need to set that example. So when they make a mistake and we quote unquote forgive them or we show them, a lot of leeway and flexibility and kindness and compassion, that child begins to have a self-esteem. Oh, okay. I'm not a bad person for making a mistake. It's okay, right? If the parent can say, it's okay, everyone makes mistakes, it's not a big deal. Now the child feels less shame. The child feels confident. The child is not afraid to make mistakes tomorrow. But if you yell and scream and punish the child, now that child is going to be terrified to make mistakes. And the child is going to have low self-esteem. So when we punish our children, we're actually reducing their self-esteem and we are scaring them and make them feel like the world is not a safe place. So what do we do instead? Well, we connect with them. We talk to them. When they're very young, we don't have to do anything. We just take the object away. We just, redirect them. But as they grow older, we can say, hey, this is not okay with me. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Let's talk about it. I don't want you to come home at 4 o'clock. You want to come home at 4 o'clock. I want you to come home at 10 o'clock. Let's create a negotiation that can create a partnership. And the more you give the trust to your child to create that partnership, the more they're going to feel empowered, more they're going to feel connected. And it's going to be a much better relationship because they're not building all this resentment. They're not sitting with all this pain. They have a capacity to share. And that is so important.
I know how French parents will react to this, and I'm full agree with you. And some could tell you, okay, but if my child hits me, I explain, I stop, but it continues. How do I do?
Well, if the child is hitting you, meaning a young child or an older child?
Yes, I think toddler.
Well, toddlers are hitting you because they don't know how to express their frustrations. So it's not personal. It's something that they are just trying to understand how to manage. You know, you can redirect them, you can distract them, you can play a game with them, you can make them hit a pillow. It's not hard to redirect a toddler. Or you can leave them for a few minutes so they calm down, put on the music, dance, be silly, make them laugh. They're so easy to redirect. If it's an older child, then you just have to leave the room, right? You don't have to stay around if the child is being so abusive.
Thank you. You know, in France, there is a psychoanalyst that say to lock down children in their room.
What?
Yes, and she's very famous.
That is so crazy. No, anyone listening, do not lock your child in the room. It'll make things worse. It never makes things better. It actually makes it worse. And the child begins to feel a lot of shame and a lot of low self-esteem. So don't lock your child in the room.
Thank you for saying that. You talk us about the perfect parents. I don't know if it's the same all around the world, but in France, sometimes I feel that people want perfect children, you know, and then want exceptional children. They want to be an incredible children and fantastic child, you know. What can you say about that?
Well, we want fantastic children because we want to feel fantastic, right? Why do we need a big house, 10 cars, fancy shoes, a rich husband or wife? Because we feel good that way. So in the same way, we use our children as these puppets, these trophies to feel good about ourselves. And that's so sad because our children do feel the pressure that unless I'm great or unless I'm amazing, my parents are not going to love me. And we grew up like that as well, with this pressure to be somebody important. And that's really not fair for us parents to do to our children because it puts so much pressure on them to be some kind of way so that we feel comfortable, we feel happy. And that's not fair because they have a right to be average or ordinary. Everybody cannot be a prime minister. Everybody shouldn't be a prime minister or a president, as we can see in America.
Yes.
And so it's not realistic. And it's really coming from the parents' ego to want this greatness in their own lives.
How can parents begin to heal their own emotional wounds to prevent passing them on to their children?
So the best way to stop passing down your wounds to your children is to first become aware of your reactions. You start from your reactions. So if you're eating too much, drinking too much, screaming too much, you start there. And then you go one layer down and you ask, why am I yelling so much? Why am I screaming? What am I feeling in those moments? And then you begin to realize you're feeling some type of fear. Fear that I'm not good enough, fear that they are not good enough, fear that they don't love me, fear that they are judging me. And when we begin to touch on the fear, then we can, begin to connect it back to our childhood if we can, and realize that this fear is the driver of the reaction, not the child. The child is not the driver of the reaction. The fear is the driver. And even if somebody is behaving badly, at some point, we have to make a choice. Do I want to stay in this relationship? Do I want to accept it? Or do I want to change it or leave it? How can I make a conscious choice? But when we keep blaming our children or keep blaming our partners, that actually keeps us stuck in the same pattern.
I've done all my questions, but I've got one more because this afternoon I listened to your last episode of Parenting and You, your podcast, about parental guilt. And I think that it's a wonderful episode. What can you tell about parental guilt, especially about mother guilt? Because it seems that it's quite hard, especially for mothers who choose to work outside the house.
Yes, there's so much guilt because we mothers get the burden, get the whole burden of being the parent. And of course, now we're sharing it with our partners. But there's something in the mother that feels more connected to their children because she gave birth to them. So the child looks to the mother more, I think, for emotional support and emotional guidance. So if the mother is then working or busy, the mother feels that pressure because the baby wants the mother more than the father. So it's hard for the working mother to balance between being a mother and being a career woman. And the pressure is so great. So the way I help parents is to, recognize the guilt, become aware of it, and be kind to yourself. It's okay. You're allowed to work outside the home, but you're also going to feel a lot of guilt. So how do you manage both? The task is not to not be guilty. You're going to be guilty forever. But it's how can you be guilty, but also don't stop yourself from living your life? And how do you fill your child's cup? And how do you also fill your own cup? And it's not easy. It's not perfect. It's very messy. But you do a little bit on Monday and then a little bit on Tuesday and a little bit on Wednesday, and you can still have your own life. It's okay. You're just going to have to pay the price of that guilt, which most working mothers have because we're not staying in the house as much as we used to. But it's okay. Your children will be okay. They will survive. But you need to be compassionate to yourself and do the best you can. But it is true that children need their mother many times more than they need their father. They need the maternal energy. And feminists get angry when I say this as if I'm saying something bad. Like, what do you mean they need the mother? They should need the father equally. The child came from the mother, no? There's a bond there that is very familiar. And the child senses the bond with the mother that it does not sense with the father. So the fathers can be amazing, but that doesn't take away that the child is going to want to be with the mother. And that puts a lot of pressure on us women, especially if we want to have a career, but we have to manage that. I worked and I had a child and I feel guilty every day. So I'm not going to not feel guilty, but how do I allow the guilt without it eating me up?
One last thing for the father. So, in France, in the media, we are often said to father, we often say to be the law in the house and to intimidate children. Okay, that's a very traditional model. What do you want to say to French father that can hear you now?
That is such an old-fashioned way of raising children where you are the bad guy and you come in to yell at the children. That's just so stupid. Don't do it. You don't have to do it because that's the old traditional way. Children can learn so much from fathers. Fathers have such an amazing role in children's lives. The male figure is so powerful. The masculine energy is so important for our children. So don't mix it up with yelling and screaming because that is the toxic patriarchy. You can have a patriarchy, just don't have a dysfunctional patriarchy, a toxic patriarchy. Be a leader, but be kind and benevolent and compassionate and patient. That's also masculine energy. Masculine doesn't mean you have to yell and scream and punish and, be mean. Masculine means to be grounded, to be stable, to be patient, to be even-tempered. That is real masculine energy.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shefali.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. We can find each other on social networks like Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. See you soon.